just finding somewhere suitable to park, and I will be with you in a sec. Good evening, Suffolk. Good evening, Martin. Good evening, Painkiller. And Jordan. Andy. No, it's not the red light district. Hey, Tim. How are you all doing? No, this evening, I'm actually currently in Manchester. And I'm obviously not at home. So I don't have my usual background, my usual canvas, if you like. So tonight I'm parked up on a curb, a little bit of curb crawling tonight. And I've got you mounted on a central position because on the way up on the motorway, my usual cradle decided to give up its ghost and cracked. So I'm currently in the, if you recall, sometimes I keep my pipe on that central holder thing, that phone holder, so that's what you're in at the moment, and I've relocated it to the front of the dash so you're not looking at my speedometer all throughout this live. John, hi, good evening, how are you? I haven't actually taken a pipe out yet, and I'll show you that shortly. I haven't actually decided if I should go with a cigar or a pipe. What are you guys smoking? So I'm currently en route, if you like, to my holiday destination, which actually, Tim, I won't be a million miles away from you this year. Ooh, Altenay-Mere, very nice. That's starting to colour up a little bit for you. Well, if you're all smoking pipes, I guess I shall have to join you. So I have with me this bag, which is a 4-pipe bag. It's a 5-pipe bag, actually, I tell a lie. I've got my own Bulldog, not Bulldog, the Rhodesian, which I've been smoking the heck out of. So that's this one here, which you can't see. Keep it under the light. That's the LCS Rhodesian, and it smokes very, very well. I've got to say, I've been really, really happy with the way my pipes have been smoking. Really tasting good from the off. There you can see the lineup that I've brought with me. So I have the Stanwell, alright, Painkiller, I'll have a look out for that. Sorry if I missed it. I haven't been on my emails for a while, been busy with the travelling. And I've also brought with me the Northern Briars Quebec, which is always a reliable smoker. And then we have another Northern Briars, which is the Helix. I don't know how much you can see of all of this. Hey, Garbage Man Piper, Mel, how you doing? And we have the Boswell, the Bent Boswell Apple. Pembroke in an Europe. Well, as I say, I see you're all smoking pipes, so I'm going to leave the cigar for now. And in terms of baccy, what I have with me is I brought with me a baggie of Erinmore Flake, 40th anniversary 1820 flake, some bourbon flake, which I've been smoking a little bit more recently and enjoying, some my own blend Danish Pipe Shops vintage flake, and some Orlik golden sliced. Is that it? Hold on. I think that is it. It's enough to be getting on with, I guess. So, Tim, I'm actually coming up to a village called Beverley, which I think is probably not a million miles away from you. I think I'm about half an hour away from Leeds. So you never know, I might make it up there. Hang on, I'm sure I packed some Northwoods. Maybe it was the 1820 instead of the Northwoods, because I was about to go in for a bit of Northwoods. Well, I guess it's the 1820. It's near you, John, is it? Oh, perhaps we could get together one evening. I might actually behold your visage, and you might behold mine. Well, maybe if the wife will give me a free evening, maybe we can sort a meet up, and all the people in the area, and perhaps a couple of the guys from your club that you tried putting together. Perhaps we could get together and do a little YTPC UK meetup. But it's not something I'll know until we get to our destination. We're going tomorrow morning. We had a stop off here this weekend to join my Mancunian branch of the family, and so that's happened today. It was really nice, actually. We had my parents came up, which it's not easy for them anymore. You know, they're getting on. They're not no youngsters anymore, and so they made the trip up though. Alright, so I've got some 1820 flake in the Boswell apple, so I'm just going to light that. I haven't let it sit out at all, so it might take a bit of a while to light. I haven't put a filter in. Yeah, smoke the 1820 flake that I sent you, man. Well, anyway, the other day I smoked a bowl of, I think it was Orlik golden sliced, and I only realised afterwards that I'd forgotten to put a filter in. And I have to say, I do notice a difference. Even though I didn't really get bitten a lot, I could sense the tingle, but it's very possible that my tongue is, you know, really getting a little bit more tolerant, and maybe I'd be able to survive a smoke without a filter. But the taste, you know, people talk about when I'm smoking 1820, so we'll be smoking a bowl together. Well, people talk about the flavors being narrowed and constricted or constrained with a filter. Not at all. And, you know, in actual fact, I find it purifies it a little bit like what meerschaum does. I'm just going to switch you around because I'm got my lights on in here, and everybody's driving past, staring in. Where was I? Yeah, so I actually managed to smoke that bowl without a filter, but I'm really enjoying the tobacco with a filter. I find that the same with meerschaum to some extent. It filters out, it thins out the edges, the rough edges, you know. David, how are you doing? Thanks for joining. I doubt very much that you've got Germain's 1820 flake. You might have 1820 mixture, but you won't have 1820 flake. It's a blend which they've just released, and it's the UK version of Penzance. And anybody out there who's tried it, it'd be interesting to hear your opinion. There's a lot of conjecture whether it's the same or not. Germain's themselves maintain that it's pretty much the same as RDF, Rich Dark Flake, and Stonehaven. Pretty much the same, with very slight differences in order not to breach any licensing and food and safety kind of regulations. Sorry, David. It's I'm on the phone, so I don't see all. Sometimes when I'm talking, the messages they flick on the screen and flick off again after a few seconds, and it's only when I sort of dial back to look at the messages. So I apologise. I'm not at home. I don't have a big screen in front of me with all the messages. So, hey, Pipe Puffer UK. Hi Meeks, 1820 flake, is it an aromatic? Only in as much as that it's got latakia in it. But otherwise it's a latakia based blend, a Balkan I guess you'd call it. But no, it's not an aromatic as we would call it, an aromatic. But it is very nice. I do find it not quite as rich as Penzance. That's just me personally. I find it a little bit thinner, and it lacks a little bit of that final bite. You know, when you, I was talking about this, and I don't know if people understood what I was saying. When you get a certain blend, you smoke it, you get the components, but there's a certain point as you're drawing, as you're taking it in, whether it's through the mouth or through the nose or whatever it might be. But there's a point where it all snaps into focus. It is quite moist, Tim, so depending on where you keep it, it could get mouldy. It's a bit of a shame. I mean, that's Germain stuff is really wet, a lot of it, you know. Sometimes it does go mouldy. I did a trade with somebody in Austria not long ago, and I sent them a few pouches of Germain stuff as part of the trade, and that went mouldy as well. I have noticed a little bit of white on some of my 1820 flake. I think it's probably a good idea with Germain's is when you get a batch of their tobacco to just let it sit out for a little bit. Get rid of some of that excess moisture before you jar it up. I should really do that when I get back home. I must have almost a pound, well, 3/4 of a pound of it in big jars, and I should really just shake them around a bit and air them out of it. I've had it with I had mold once with with Amphora Virginia. It was a 50-gram pouch, but I managed to separate out the affected area and jarred up the rest, and it was pretty much okay, but I smoked through it fairly quickly, so it shouldn't become a major issue. But the truth of the matter is, as soon as you see mold, I think the thing to do is to take it out of the jar, remove the mold, and let it dry for a bit, and then just keep it segregated from any other tobacco in a sealed jar or container or whatever it might be, because the spores, that's also important when you open the jar, is to make sure that there's no open tobacco nearby, because the spores are airborne, and you could end up, you know, affecting other tobacco as well. Now this is Jermaine's 1820 flake. It does have the flavour, as I say, not as rich. It's the same DNA, same family, and I don't know if it just needs more aging or if it's just that's the way it's going to taste. But it does taste a little bit less rich. So we had a nice little family get together. As I say, my parents came up from London as well. And they're, as I say, they're aging. They're not in the best of health. They're not ill, thank God, but they're just older and frail. My father just celebrated his 80th birthday. But he's doing well. My brother came also from London with his wife and daughter. And they're off tomorrow morning from here, from Manchester. They're off to Spain for their vacation. And my brother, who lives here in Manchester, he had his family celebration with a bunch of his married kids. He's got, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 married kids. And, you know, with all the grandchildren, it was really just a special time for everybody to sort of reconnect. And they're going off, I think in a week's time, they're going to be going up to, also in Yorkshire somewhere, about a half an hour, 40 minutes drive from where I'm going with my family. So we may get together whilst we're out there. Thanks, Mel. Are you off? All the best, Mel. Oh, right, that's a shame. How are your mum and dad doing? 82. Both are 82. Wow. Well, where are we? Four model and 2 model. What is that, David? Is that a tobacco? Well, you guys might remember a couple of weeks ago I mentioned something about something interesting that's going to be happening, which my channel is going to be part of. and I hope to be announcing that possibly whilst I'm away, which will affect the whole YTPC. I think that it's been sort of the catalyst for it has been the whole demonetization on YouTube, which has triggered some people to take some action to ensure that the YTPC has longevity. So I hope to be making that announcement very soon. No, not a new channel, not for me anyway, but it's something that I'll be part of. It's bigger than me. I will just be a part of it, as will some other YTPCers. But it's something which will hopefully allow the YTPC to continue, number one, to upload content, in a way which won't be reliant on YouTube. David, hi. Yeah, 1820 is only available in the UK at the moment. I think a lot of people are worrying that the demonetization is the thin end of the wedge. And they're worrying that, I mean, it's the way the whole tobacco industry has been going anyway. Hi, Pipe Puffer. Yeah, you and Master, cool. I'm here for another few hours, and then I'm off up to Yorkshire. But I think people are basically worrying that, as I say, it's the thin end of the wedge, and the whole trajectory of the approach and attitude towards tobacco is just going to get more and more restrictive for UK, but really for the rest of the Western world, really. And it's become part of this whole political correct movement, which is just being extended and pushed into tobacco as well. Well, cool. It's a good question because, you know, I think we all go through that from time to time. It's possible that it's time for you to just give it a break for a week or a few days. Do you smoke with or without a filter? Hey, Boris. Not so much doom and gloom, Boris. I think it's more just watching the trajectory of how things are going, and it just seems to be getting worse and worse. We've just had news recently, a release in the press here in the UK, that they want to abolish smoking 100% by 2030. Do you smoke it with or without a filter, Cole? Your pipes, do they have filters in them or not? Well, if they've been opened for 2 months, and if they're completely dried out, then it could just be that by the time you light it, it's burning hot. And it's just, you're not tasting anything because it's too dry. Tobacco, you want to find a nice sort of happy ground where it's not too wet and not too dry. If you're going to keep a tobacco tin open for that long, you really want to keep it in an airtight container, possibly in a jar, a mason jar, or even a plastic airtight container. You just need to make sure that the moisture level is kept reasonable. I find that tobacco, and even cigars, but more so pipe cigars, is far more tolerant than we make it out to be. It's not the end of the world. You can have pipe tobacco out for a few weeks and it could be fine. It really depends on how it starts off, the moisture level at the beginning, and how quickly it's evaporating. So that will obviously be affected by the environment in which it finds itself. So you just have to look at that and see if you're in a very hot climate, for instance. Whereabouts in the world are you, Cole? Hi Tony, there is no pipe club this month, but I've got some excellent news in that we should be back on for next month. I kind of was talking doom and gloom the last time I was in JJ Fox's last week, I think it was, and I was speaking to one of the guys there, and I had the impression from him that it was all over. I had the impression that the pipe club was going to be permanently evicted from JJ Fox's. That's interesting, cool. If you're in the UK, well, I don't know. I would say get a fresh tin of tobacco, keep it in a moisture in an airtight container, and see if that improves anything when you smoke it. I think, cool, it's highly unlikely that your taste buds will have been affected permanently. The body is an amazing thing and it regenerates. And if it is your taste buds, you just need to give it a rest. Maybe give it a week without smoking anything at all. And in that time, use mouthwashes, refresh your palate, keep your oral hygiene as good as you can. And I think you'll find that you'll reclaim your taste buds. It is very important to keep your oral hygiene as efficiently as you can if you smoke a pipe. Hey, I'm not a doctor, Cool, but I can't see why your taste buds would be permanently damaged. Absolutely, Boris, as far as the alcohol addiction. Coming back to the Pipe Club of London, so when I was in there last week, they were talking about it to being with the solicitors. It had gone to that stage where the neighbours were complaining about the level of smoke. And we were a little bit incredulous about that, because that's a cigar shop predominantly. Yes, they sell pipe and pipe tobacco, but the people that sit in the lounge upstairs are predominantly cigar smokers, and the smell that they're going to be smelling is going to be cigar smoke. And the truth of the matter is as well, that our pipe club is in the evening after the working day, and the people that are complaining are the offices next door. So really, it's highly unlikely that it's got anything to do with the pipe smokers at the club. So anyway, I was very relieved. I had a chat on the phone with Bernard, the president of the club. He was kind enough to give me a call to give me an update, because we've been talking about it, and we've been talking about looking for other alternative premises. And he was very kind enough to give me an update to say that we're back on, not this month, but for September. So that's really good. Cigar 77, you're probably right, actually, to be honest. If I really am honest about it, it's more about the healthcare costs. But they will. There's always been a discussion about the balancing between the healthcare cost and the tax revenues that they make. But I guess they're having the best of both worlds by hiking up the tax, as always, and reducing the cost of healthcare. Well, certainly, Pipe Puffer, by the recent announcement this week, about the amount of drug deaths, and that it spiked by 17% in the last year, especially up in Wales, I think it was. I think that seems to have sent shockwaves around the government. Well, Cull seems to be on the point there. I do remember when that happened. I mean, I don't remember the date, but I do remember the event. So the key problem with all of the cigar lounges, the smoking lounges in the UK, is that technically, oh right, cool, fair enough. It's like people remember what they were doing. You know, people used to say that they remember what they were doing when Kennedy was shot. For me and my kids, it's we remember what we were doing when Princess Diana died, or when the Twin Towers were hit. I can't remember what I was saying. I was just starting to say something. Anybody? I was about to say something, and I don't remember what it was. Thanks, Pipe Puffer. Well, I don't know anything about how that works there, Boris. But are they given some kind of autonomy to make their own laws on these kind of things? Well, JJ Foxes have had a problem with their neighbours, because I don't know if you guys remember, maybe a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I did a video at the cigar lounge in JJ Fox's, and there was a lot of drilling in the background. And I talked about it in some of my videos where I was always sort of incredulous about how people how in the city people were able to build and keep building despite the age of the buildings. They would hollow out and shell out these huge, beautiful Victorian style buildings and make a modern block internally whilst retaining the outside curtilage of the original site, the original structure. And anyway, there was a building next door where there was one of these kind of real high level projects going on, and it went on for a year or two. So there was nobody living in or working in that block for quite some time. When the building was complete, and it's literally the building next door to the club, to JJ Fox's, when the building was complete recently and offices started to take occupation, that's when the complaints started to happen. They were complaining about the cigar smoke smell. So it had been going on for a while, and then it obviously came to a head, and I assumed that the offices next door instructed solicitors, and the solicitors then had to deal with solicitors instructed by JJ Fox's. So I guess JJ Fox's got nervous, and they, well, not nervous necessarily, but took precaution and said best if we just stop for now, and they cancelled all the cigar events as well. And when I was there last week, it really didn't sound good. So I was really surprised to get a call back from Bernard later, and he told me this was on Thursday, and he told me that we're okay, we're back in. So I was really, really relieved to hear that, because for us to find our own premises would be extremely difficult. It would mean trying to actually finance the purchase or the rent of a premises, which would be dedicated to the club, which would be very restrictive. And JJ Foxes have been very hospitable, with that unwritten rule of us spending money. I think that might become cast in stone now, where you'd be obligated to spend some money downstairs before you go upstairs, which I think is a perfectly fair way to go about things. Well, Tim, that sounds like a very simple thing that you're saying, but the truth of the matter is, JJ Fox's is really a very small concern compared to the buildings which surround it. And I know you're saying that tongue in cheek, but in reality, the landlords are the ones who are dealing with it. It's not JJ Fox's. They don't own the building. They are tenants, and ultimately they have a lease. They have a commercial lease, and their landlord, their freeholder, their leaseholder, their lessee, their freeholder will be the ones who will have been contacted by the neighbours with a complaint. And bottom line, if they were to go to the local authority and complain based on environmental health grounds, they'd shut us down in just like that, in a flash. So it had to be handled whether we liked it or not. Hey Jimmy, how you doing? No, not on patrol, but I'm not at home. I'm midway between travels to my vacation. I'm currently up in Manchester in the UK, about 200 miles away from my home, enjoying a bowl of 1820 flake. And we're staying in we've been given a house to stay in by some friends of my brother who live here, so I can't very well smoke in their house. Pipe Puffer, I don't think anybody's going to tell you, any policeman will tell you straight out that smoking is illegal. Driving without due care and attention could be applied to eating an apple as well. I remember once I was driving home from work as a passenger, and the driver, the guy that I worked with at the time, was eating an apple, and it's something he did as a matter of habit every single day. Had that habit. On the way home from work he would eat an apple. And one day a policeman on a motorcycle stopped and pulled him over and told him to stop eating the apple. Although he didn't shop him. Yeah, Tim, but somehow, you're right. Lots of history, but when you have an office block with tenants who in total pay probably millions of pounds worth of rent, in St James's, the rent there is going to be skyrocketing. Money talks. And people who don't smoke see it from a very, very different perspective than we do. We see it as an encroachment on our civil rights to be able to smoke. But they see it as, these guys are smoking dangerous fumes near us. We want them out. They see it in a very different light. It's a litigious society. People are always worried about getting sued. And all you need was one member of the office to suffer from an asthma attack, which is a real thing for somebody who suffers from asthma, and they could get sued. So they're certainly not going to want to take that risk. Delicate one, this. You could, what is that, attack? What does that mean? Anyway, so I was talking about cigar lounges. So here in the UK, technically it's illegal to smoke indoors in a commercial situation. So cigar lounges or smoking lounges per se don't actually exist. What is allowed at the moment is a loophole, which I believe was championed by the previous head of Hunters and Francow. I forget his name right now. I'm sure Tim's going to enlighten us. He passed away not long ago. I think he had throat cancer. And anyway, so he at the time found this loophole, which I'm sure was also credited to many of the MPs, because I'm sure lots of them in the House of Lords, these kind of people smoking cigars, they wanted somewhere to have their little smoke from time to time. And they managed to agree on a loophole of sampling, where you could buy a cigar in the shop and sample it to see if it's something that you want to buy, you know, to buy a box of. So you'd be allowed to smoke a cigar to try and see, to sample it. And that's really the loophole at the moment. So all of the cigar lounges that exist, like the Cuban Cigar Club, JJ Fox's, Dunhill, and there's a few Cigars Termius branches around. And there's a few hotels, like the Bulgari Hotel has a lounge. The Palace of Westminster is exempt from the smoking ban. Okay. Well, the Palace of Westminster, you mean even for... I see what you mean. So that is basically, it's not a private property, is it? There's all the MPs and House of Lords and all of that lot. But anyhow, sampling is the way that we get around it nowadays. Which is one of the reasons also why JJ Foxes are going to be insisting that people buy a product before they go upstairs to the lounge when it comes to the club meetings. Yeah, I got you, Tim. It's interesting how that's exempt though, isn't it? One rule for them and another rule for the rest of us. The amount of tobacco, alcohol and other substances that probably gets consumed within the walls of the Palace of Westminster would probably surprise a lot of people. Not just that, the amount of nefarious activities would be probably a little bit make your hair stand on end. Well, China's, yeah, well, I mean, there are some societies where smoking is really still, it proliferates. Cigarette smoking, I'm talking about. In Israel, for instance, smoking is rife there. It's a very standard thing there for people to do. A lot of the Arabic countries, in the Middle East generally, there's a lot of smoking. They're big consumers of cigars as well in the Middle East. I know that, for instance, when Habanos SA, when any of the brands are released with regional editions for one of the Middle Eastern countries, there's quite a chase on to get those cigars because they're always richer and stronger. They like their cigars strong there. I think there was a Ramon Allones release in Lebanon not so long ago, and I think there was quite a rush on for those. I never got any. Have any of you guys tried the collaboration between Peter Stockaby and Samuel Gowerth, the aged Virginia flake that's just been released? The 4th generation. I started watching a video from Beans the other day. Well, not the other day, earlier this evening, but I didn't actually get to watch the whole video. He was just opening the box and taking the tobacco out, and he was saying that he couldn't really smell much. I have to be honest, John, it doesn't surprise me. I've been really disappointed with a lot of the limited edition, small batch, whatever you want to call it, anniversary releases of late. And what I've kind of been sensing is that they just tweak the flavors to be something different, and rather than it being a particularly special tobacco leaf. And it has some parallels with some of the special releases in the cigar world. And what I've come to realize, and the same is true in the cigar world as is in the pipe tobacco world, is that the regular line tobaccos, if you get them in good condition and it's a tobacco that you like with a bit of age, you can't beat it. Because what happens with the limited editions is they're trying to cram in something special into a new release, and a lot of times it just doesn't work, and you need to let those age as well, and you don't really know what that's going to be like when it ages. But if you take a full Virginia flake, or if you take any other type of Virginia flake or a Latakia blend, a favorite cigar, and you let it age, but a regular blend, a regular release blend, or a regular release cigar, and you just treat it well, you look after it, let it get some age, those are the best smokes for me. I have to be honest that it's, yes, you know, you can get some special limited edition cigars, like say for instance the Robusto Supremos, which is a ridiculously expensive cigar now, and you can't really pick them up that easily, but I smoked a fair few of them when they came out, and they were actually very nice. But the reason for that is that the tobacco really genuinely is aged tobacco. But I've been finding now that with the Cuban cigars that I smoke, I'm less and less going for the regional editions and the limited editions. Nowadays, if I get the option of smoking a limited edition compared to a regional. Ooh, coppers. We'll see if they come around the block and ask me what I'm doing here. So nowadays, unless I'm thinking about buying a limited edition tobacco, limited edition Cuban cigar for investment purposes, which I'm not doing at the moment, I'm not in a position to do it. But other than that, if I had a choice of a new release, a limited edition, and a new release regional, there's a good chance that I might go for the regional, because I find them closer to the regular blends, just with slight tweaking. The limited editions, I find that they do the same kind of thing as I was saying with the small batches. They try to do something exceptional, and for me it doesn't always work. They'll put on it a darker, most of the limited edition, the Edición Limitada Cuban cigars have got a darker wrapper, usually be something closer to a Maduro wrapper, and I just don't find it works so well with Cuban style cigar leaf. That's just me. It is a nice box. I have to admit that the box that they're presenting it in really looks nice. It's like a mini cigar box. It's like a mini cigar humidor. But the only value that's going to have is, number one, when you've smoked the tobacco, is to keep your little trinkets in it, or a tiny cigar, or to keep it sealed, and to have it as, it'll have its value because it's in its original condition from a limited edition release. So if you're buying it for investment or for collector's purposes, then yes, that's a nicely presented product. But for a smoker, I think it's a waste of money. I've actually brought a Connie B with me. I haven't smoked it yet. It's been in my humidor for a few weeks now. And I brought a few cigars with me to sort of try and, you know, make a bit more of a memorable kind of smoke on holiday. The last time I did that, which I've mentioned before, was on New Year's, and it was an absolute fail because the cigar was terrible. Let me just turn you around and I'll show you the cigars that I brought, because I was considering smoking one this evening. So I've got a little tapador. So I brought with me a regional edition San Luis Rey, Spanish regional edition. You've seen these before from me. I have a Nica Libra, which Art smoked the other day and enjoyed. No, it wasn't Art. Who was it? It was Tree. It was Tree. And I've had these for about 3 years now. And they're really smoking great. They're a really cheap, economical cigar. And they're smoking fantastically well. They're really chocolatey, really, really nice cigar. Been enjoying those. I've only got a few of these left. Just bear with me a second. Okay, back with you. So that's that one. I also brought with me a Hoyo de Monterrey, I think it's called Presidente, if I'm not mistaken. It's a Perfecto. I bought these in 2017 and they were really fresh, but they're really starting to improve now. They've got a couple of years on them. They're still not at their best, but they're really good. I haven't tried the backwoods cigars. I remember watching people smoking them. I think it was Ben, possibly, Old Soul. He was smoking those quite heavily for a while. I think he's really into his cigars at the moment. He's been sort of letting go of a lot of his tobaccos and pipes. This is a Arturo Fuente short story, Hemingway short story. A very nice. There's also like a small perfecto. It's a really quite a small cigar. It's maybe 3.5, 4 inches. A very nice sort of middle of the road cigar. Quite a nutty, tobacco-y kind of flavor, but it's really nice. I would like it to have perhaps a little bit more sweetness, but it's a really good sort of go-to cigar. Anytime smoke, I smoked a lot of these back in a couple of years ago when I was smoking non-Cubans most of the time. I was really out of favor with Cuban cigars. I was having too many problems with the cigars. They were blocked or tight or whatever it was, and I was fed up, and I ended up buying a lot of non-Cuban cigars, and this was one of them. And there's quite a few. I had some really limited ones, the ones with the blacker, a lot of the black on the label, and a blacker a wrapper on the cigar, which was quite rare. So I was told anyway. But a nice cigar. So this one I brought along just as a short smoke. This one is a La Gloria Cubana, and this is also a Spanish regional. I'll come to your questions in a second. This one is a Mexican cigar, which it says on it Alvaro, I think. Alvaro Cedros, because it's in a cedar wrap. Don't know if you can see that. And this one was gifted to me by Juanito. Juanito and I have been trying to get together over the past couple of months, and we haven't managed. And in the end, he left a couple of cigars with me for me at the Dino shop, and I picked them up last week. So he left me one of these, and he also left me a limited edition 2007, I think it was. I think it was a Hoyo de Monterey, I'm not sure, but I've left that back home in the humidor. And finally is the Connie B. So it's quite a big cigar. In America this would be called pretty much a Toro size. I'll be honest with you, if I do smoke it now, it'll really be just to sort of create a benchmark, a baseline from which to measure it in the future, because this is a very fresh cigar. I think it was from 2018 possibly, I'm not sure, I can't remember anymore. It's a new release, so it would have been it can't be any older than 2018, I think. So it's not going to taste its best. Already decapitated it because I bought it in the shop, and I wanted to make sure that the draw was okay. That's what I do nowadays. If I buy a cigar here in the UK in one of the tobacconists, I will ask them to take the cap off straight away so I can draw it, test it. If it's tight and unsmokable, I'll give it back to them for another one. And as long as you're on the premises, most of them will do that. As soon as you leave the premises, that's it. If it's a dud, it's a dud, which you'll have to deal with. And many times I do deal with them with something like a cigar saver, there are a few devices that you can get which are designed to clear blockages. Oh, sorry, I've also got Undercrown Maduro. Very, very nice cigar. It was interesting, I saw Daily Cigars do a review on the Sungrown, and he gave it a bit of a thumbs down, which I was very surprised at. Very surprised. I don't know if you guys follow him at all, but to me, I find it to be the best one of the range. But more recently, I've been smoking the Maduro one and actually been enjoying it. It's really, I've had this box of Maduros coming to the end of the box now, but also that's been in my humidor for a couple of years, and I must be honest, I never really considered that non-Cuban cigars aged as well as Cubans, and they probably don't. There's a fox running in front of me. But they do age. They still do age, and they do mellow. They smooth out so well, they may not take on a richness and a tanginess that Cuban cigars take on, but they do smooth out and give an additional sort of chocolatey coffee sometimes, depending on the profile. I haven't smoked Esplendido Cull. That's a like a Lonsdale style, I think. No, sorry. If it's a 47, that's going to be a Churchill, isn't it? If it's a 47 ring gauge by 7 inches, that's going to be in the regions of a Churchill size. And I don't think I've had one of those. Hi, George. You could certainly send some to me, Cole, and I'll send you something back. Drop me a line by email. I would definitely like to try them, as long as they're genuine. I'm not insinuating that you wouldn't send me anything other than anything genuine, but would be more than happy to do a trade with you there. Hi Josh, how you doing? Have you tried that Ascolti pipe? Simon, when any kind of tobacco after smoking you get white ash, that means tobacco is good quality. Generally speaking, white ash, I'm no expert, but to my understanding, white ash generally means that you've grown the tobacco, whether it's cigar leaf or pipe tobacco, you've grown it in a well cultivated soil. It's a soil which has been well looked after and has got the right amount of sulfates and other bits and bobs that they put in the soil. Hi Suffolk, and that's my understanding. Cool, I'm putting up my email address now. Magnesium, right, cool. Okay, there you go. Like I said, I'm no expert. I'm trying to remember if, when smoking a cigar, and I've had a white ash, whether it was a memorable smoke or not. And to be honest, the amount of cigars that I've had over the years, I don't know, it's got to be in the hundreds at least, and I can't remember ever thinking to myself, you know, the white ash on this is amazing, this has been one of the best smokes that I've ever had. It doesn't ring a bell, it doesn't ring true to me, I must be honest. It's not something that I've experienced. According to Richard Hacker, yeah, okay. I do enjoy his books, I must be honest. I got one of his books from Karen Ezrati when I went to buy stuff in her sale. She gave me a few of the books and magazines, and that was one of them. She also gave me a book. It was in German, a book on pipe carvers around the world. A very, very interesting book, and you have all of the well-known carvers and carving houses, companies, factories, with a couple of pages dedicated to each one, with examples of their pipes, and it says on it how many pipes they made per year, what they used in their pipes, whether they used any adornments, the price range from to. An interesting, very informative book. The only problem is that it's in German, and whilst I can understand a little bit of German and speak a little bit, sort of a mixture of Yiddish and German, I can't read it. It's you know, you've got to have a good memory to get from the beginning of the word to the end of the word. The words are so long, and by the time you got to the end of the word, you've forgotten what the beginning was. Right, just thinking to myself whether I should go for a cigar or call it a day, or another pipe. I don't know the answer to that, David. The tobacco plants that they grow for cigars, I don't know what strain of the Tobacciana or type of tobacco plant it is, and I don't know what makes a burley, what the differences are between the tobacco plants. I'm sure somebody will be able to enlighten us. Tim is usually a font of information. David Mercury was asking Tim what tobacco is used for cigar leaf. In other words, is it burley tobacco? Is it just I was saying I don't really know the answer to that question. I just know that I see fields of tobacco and they all look the same when it comes to cigars in terms of the tobacco plant, but I don't know if burley is it a different strain of tobacco? Is it a process? I mean, Cavendish and Latakia and Perique, they're all a process. But is burley the base tobacco? Or is it Virginia, which is the base tobacco? Are there different strains? I'll be honest with you, I don't know. Yeah, I was just repeating your question, David, for Tim. Because Tim's usually our encyclopedia. Either that or he's fast on the Google button. Well, I don't think I'm going to start a cigar because I won't be able to finish it, which would be a shame. And I should have brought with me I brought the El Rey del Mundo, the new regional, the UK regional edition. I bought that the other day, but I didn't actually bring it with me, which is a shame. It would have been nice to do a video on that whilst I was away. Cafe Cream, that brings back memories. I haven't had one of those for probably about 25 years. I remember trying them. I definitely bought a box or two going back to my youth just to experiment, but I haven't had one in yonks. I was in where was I, on Friday was it? We'd come up here to Manchester and I wanted to buy a cigar, like a small, maybe an H. Upmann half Corona or something like that. And I went into a tobacconist, I don't remember where it was, and I asked them if they had any cigars. Oh no, it was a service station on the motorway, and my cigars were all packed up. So I thought I'd just buy a tobacco when we stopped off on the way, a cigar. But they had King Edward's, which is a classic machine-made cigar. I should have actually bought it. It would have been fun to try it. I haven't had a machine-made cigar for a long time. Are cigarillos considered cigars? I guess that's just a matter of what you think of them. Cigar purists who only smoke long filler handmade cigars, I guess, would say no. But I must say that in my earlier days when I was experimenting with cigars, going back about 25 years ago, I smoked Villager cigars. You know, the ones that come in the yellow box. They're box pressed and they're pre-cut, and I enjoyed those cigars. I must admit, I did enjoy them. I should really, yeah, it's not a bad idea, George, is to look at some of the machine-made cigars. The square ones, yes, John. I haven't had those for a long time, but I did go through a fair few of those, as I say, about 25 years ago, probably. In the early parts of my marriage, I did dabble a little bit once with cigars. I remember once getting a Romeo and Juliet at a wedding, which I enjoyed. And I would have the odd cigar every so often, but not on a regular basis, really. I don't know what the sort of machine ones cost these days, King Edward or that kind of thing, I don't know. That's the only one you've smoked, John, the Villager one, the square one? I think they come with either 5 or 6 cigars in a box. I just liked the way those looked, that's why I bought them. And I liked the box. It had a certain classy, sort of classic look about it. And it was just looked good. And I enjoyed them. Tim, I'm also lost on all of those different descriptions. You know, dark fired, fire cured, flue cured. I have read up the descriptions of each of them, but I've forgotten the difference. But they're certainly all ways to apply smokiness on those ones, and the particular ones. But fire cured, I don't know. George, as I say, the ones that I can remember with any kind of detail would be those Villager cigars, and to my memory, I enjoyed them a lot. I wasn't in any way, I had no knowledge about cigars in those days. I was only sort of playing around, and I would literally, you know, I knew nothing about them. I knew nothing about humidifying and humidity. I would have a box of them, of 4 cigars or 5 cigars, and I would smoke one, and maybe the next one only a month later, without having, you know, kept them humidified. So I wouldn't have known the difference. But still, they just, if I remember correctly, I enjoyed them. Perhaps whilst on holiday, maybe I'll buy some to resurrect that memory and see if I still enjoy them, now that I've had a fair experience with other cigars, supposedly premium cigars. So John, what's your go-to pipe tobacco? I think I've asked you before, but I don't remember what you said, how long you've been smoking a pipe for. I think you said it was quite a long time, if I remember correctly. Since you were 6. Gordon Bennett. So you've been smoking for 14 years now? Stone the Flaming Crows is exactly right. 20 to 1, people walking the streets, coming in off the latch. Saturday night. $18.20 fleck, fair enough. Dark Fired Kentucky, I haven't tried that. Jermaine's Brown Fleck, I have tried that. Well, John, that was one of my earliest memories too. I've spoken about it many times on my channel, about the teachers that I had in school who would smoke a pipe in class. During the class, you'd smoke a pipe or a cigar. And those are some of the most influential memories that I have of pipe smoking. The aromas were just something which sort of captured me. Oh, the Auric Dark Fired, yeah, okay, fair enough. I have tried it, you're quite right. The bourbon flake, no. Not as yet. I'm hoping that it does. If only to that all of you should be able to experience the smell, the aroma of that tobacco. It really is something special. It is sticky. It is, you know, it is an aromatic after all, but it's not. When you smoke it, it's not like sickly sweet or anything like that. I think that it's still it's handled well in terms of the blending. It's not overly sickly sweet. but it is sticky. There's no question about it. Whatever casing they've got on there, it certainly is sticky. And when you rub it out, it clumps together because it's so sticky. But I think that it would be interesting to see if that takes on any kind of different flavor with a little bit of age. Generally speaking, aromatics you wouldn't really want to age too much, but because it's such a good flake, it'd be interesting to see if that does change. Which film is that, George? Well, I definitely remember. Yeah, which film though, George? What's it called? Oh, it's called Tolkien, right? Oh, sorry. It was Clan. The tobacco that my teacher smoked was Clan. Just simply because, although I was only about 7 or 8 at the time, but I just used to watch him intently when he smoked that tobacco, and I remember that played pattern on the outside of the packet that he smoked, so I knew that it was Clan. Hi Daniel. I haven't even started my vacation. I'm in mid-transit to my vacation. I've stopped off for a weekend up in Manchester to spend a weekend with my family, my brother's family. And tomorrow we're moving on to our vacation. Dog ends are the ends of cigarettes that people chuck out, and then people go and pick them up and smoke other people's leftovers. And Tim, being a school kid, obviously wasn't able to buy cigarettes, so he would walk around picking up people's dog ends. We'll be continuing on tomorrow, hopefully at a reasonable hour, to our vacation. And once I'm there and we're settled in and everybody's settled in properly, I'm sure that I will be getting some videos on. I don't know Suffolk. I don't know why it got such a bad reputation, but people are. I'm going to assume that it's a very bitey blend. It's probably the equivalent of half and half. It's an OTC here. It's kind of. I was going to say that it was the cheaper end of things, but there's no such thing anymore. All pipe tobacco, in 50-gram bags, they all cost about £13, give or take a few pennies. So why anybody would buy Clan when you could buy some McBarons or Germains, I don't know. Hey, pipe tree. Well, the pipe stems, the last one I did was okay. The last one that I shaped was that Rhodesian, that I just showed earlier on, which you guys have seen before. That's this one. You can't see it because of the lighting. But this was the one that I made with the swirly stem. Well, I changed the stem recently, so this is the one that I made and shaped. Well, I didn't make the stem, but I shaped it. And that one worked out okay. That one smokes very, very well. I've smoked it a lot already. Yeah, I haven't tried it either, Suffolk. You were mentioned in dispatches earlier on, Tree. You were talking about the what was it? The Nica Libra cigars. Good night, Meeks. Thanks for joining. Who is Clan made by these days? Are they also made by McBaron? No, Jimmy, I'm not familiar with any of the Vaughan tobaccos. I haven't tried them. Good evening, Scottish Gaucho. Tobaccos that I'll be smoking on vacation are 1820 Flake, Vintage Flake from Danish Pipe Shop, Orley Golden Sliced, London Fog, 40th anniversary. I think that was it. So I bought baggies of each of them, and if I get desperate, I can order online from anywhere like GQ Tobaccos or My Smoking Shop, and I can get them to deliver to the vacation house direct. So shouldn't be too bad. Well, it won't be Ogden's really. It's STG, fair enough. So a Scandinavian tobacco group. It won't be Ogden's. It won't be the original Ogden's because they don't exist. Any news on the Dunhill Petersons? Not yet. Not that I've seen. I think the email that was sent out from STG was talking about the fourth quarter, so soon. Fourth quarter of 2019. So I would imagine it would be something like November time, October, November, maybe December. These kind of things tend to happen later rather than earlier. So if they said the fourth quarter, it'd probably be towards the end of the year. But I'm not expecting any sort of, reinvention of the wheel. I imagine it's going to taste very similar to the Dunhill blends that we've been used to up to now. It's the same people. I wouldn't be surprised if it's exactly the same tobacco. And if in that email, it does talk about which countries will get it. So I think that there's a fair few countries in Europe that will be getting it, but it won't be going to the US. Certainly not initially. I think it was Maui that emailed me, which I talked about. I think when did I do my live? The last live during last week, and he was saying it's something to do with the importing rights in the US, smoking between smokingpipes.com and Pipes and Cigars and that kind of thing. So certainly initially it won't be in the US. Certainly not on the initial release. Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 left, and that's it from that box. What I was saying was I was talking about the aging of non-Cuban cigars, and I was using those as an example because they've aged fantastically. They're a very, very cheap cigar. I think at the time it was a box of 20 or 25 for $70 or $80, something like that. So really cheap. You know, $2, $3, $4 a cigar, maybe something like that. And at the time when I smoked them, they were nice, but you know, nothing special. But now, 2, 3 years down the line, they're so much more smooth and chocolatey and creamy. They're just a lovely cigar. Thank you, PT. Scottish Gaucho, it should be exactly the same. The only thing that you might notice is that the draw might be more open, but and it also depends on the length of the pipe. But in reality, there should be no difference. Certainly to the taste, there shouldn't be any difference. But if, for instance, you're smoking a nose warmer, say a little short poker, a stubby pipe, which has a filter option in it, that might be quite a warm smoke because there's no distance for the smoke to travel, and it might be quite an open draw. Whereas if you have, say, a billiard which has got a reasonable length on the shank, or at least on the stem, I think the longer the stem, the more you won't notice the difference. Because the filter obviously is it's 9 mm wide, so that's going to be very wide open. And if the stem is a short stem, like a Lovat stem, that's going to feel quite open. But if you have a longer stem after the 9mm cavity, it may not feel a lot different to smoking it with or without a filter. The draw certainly will be the main difference. Otherwise, you shouldn't notice a difference. If you're used to smoking a pipe without a filter, you really shouldn't have an issue smoking it in a 9mm pipe. If you're used to smoking a filter and you take the filter out, what you'll notice is the draw becoming a lot wider, a lot more open, and you'll be getting a much broader spectrum of flavors. And for me, it's a negative thing because you get the rougher edges of the profile of the tobacco. That's what I find. And I often, before I smoked a filter and I smoked a meerschaum pipe, I would find the same. The meerschaum would just constrict the flavors a little bit, take off the rough edges of the smoke. And purists, that's one of the reasons, besides for the dryness of the smoke, which they claim is because of the meerschaum absorbing the moisture, it just gives a purer smoke. You get a much purer tasting of what the flavor of the tobacco really is. And for me, I get the same with the filtered pipe, with the added benefit of a lot more moisture being removed to the extent that I get no tongue bite. That's the main reason why I smoke a filtered pipe, which is the removal of tongue bite. Hey Mike, how you doing? I'm working a street corner. Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm in mid-travel at the moment, and we're kind of halfway between home and the vacation spot. So I stopped off in Manchester for a couple of days, and I'm a guest in somebody's home, so I can't smoke in their house. So I'm parked around the corner. And tomorrow morning we're off again, and we should be arriving tomorrow, hopefully early afternoon, at our destination up in Yorkshire. Depending on what time we leave, it's only a short drive. It's about an hour and a half from here, something like that. Have I ever smoked a Sabanero 320? I certainly have. I've smoked a couple of them, and they're a great pipe. A lot of people absolutely love the 320s. I personally didn't, for two reasons. Number one is that I wouldn't say I dislike them, but they're not something that were my preference, because, thanks Mike, I appreciate that very much. Um, for two reasons in terms of the 320s. One is the weight. You know, they're quite a heavy pipe, and I do clench quite a bit, especially when I'm driving. So it was just a matter of convenience, really, that I found the 320 to be a bit of a challenge. And the second thing I didn't like about the 320 was the girth of the stem. I once had a beautiful Dunhill Bulldog, which had the same problem. Had a diamond shank, a very thick diamond shank, stem, obviously shank as well, but the stem, and the bite zone increased very quickly. So on a Lovat, for instance, you'll find that the stem is very flat, and the bite zone is going to be quite flat, and it will stay flat until it gets to the saddle bit where it becomes wider. But with the 320 and with some of the Bulldogs that I've had, the gradient from the bite zone up to the full thickness of the stem was very sharp. And I found that it was just too, even the outer edge of my lips was already having to climb up that gradient, and it just wasn't comfortable. And the 320, I find the same. I find that there isn't enough distance between the bite zone and where the girth of the stem increases. That was just me personally, but the 320 has a huge following. And if you're after some 320s, contact Tim. I believe he still has some 320s available at excellent prices. Oh, nice, Tim. I'm pleased. I'm so glad. Well, there you go. His pipes are no longer available. 320s are all sold. Cool. I've got to be honest with you. I personally have not seen, people talk about a tall thing. You maybe ask Mike at Briar Blues. He might have a better answer for you. He's been smoking a lot longer than I have. But based on the experience that I've had thus far, I haven't seen a huge difference. Officially a tall, thin, narrow bowl will give you a good smoke on a Virginia. I would have to assume that it's only if you're a fold and stuff kind of guy. If you take your flake, you don't rub it out, and you put it straight in, you fold it in half and put it into your bowl, then I can understand why a tall, thin bowl would work. It's purely for packing of your bowl reasons. But I don't do that. I rub out my flakes. I don't rub them out to a ribbon, but I rub them out nonetheless. I've not noticed any real difference. I can't say that I've smoked enough to be able to say it, that would be able to say that definitely a tall thin bowl gives me a better, tall thin chamber gives me a better smoke on a flake. And as I say, I can't see how I'd be able to tell the difference if I rub it out. I just don't see the logic. So as I say, to me the only logic makes sense is that if you put your flakes in without rubbing them out, you need a narrow bowl for that, because otherwise there's going to be a huge amount of gaps. And you're going to be sucking air a lot of the time, and you won't be having enough of a seal in the bowl for you to be able to draw and combust the tobacco. And yes, as Mike says, the best shape is the one that works for you. There are some exceptions to that in my experience, which is limited, but for instance, with a Prince shaped or an author shaped pipe, like the 320, but if you get an author shaped pipe where it's not the highest chamber in the world, but it's wide, the mouth of the chamber, say, might be a 22 or 24 mil as opposed to 18 or 20, what you end up with is, and I tend to use those for Latakia based blends, and what you end up with is you're burning at any one time more tobacco. That I would say would work with if you're an aromatic smoker, for instance, or if you're smoking a complex blend, or if you're smoking a blend with lots of components, and you want to sort of get a real good feel for the tobacco. Then the wider the chamber, the more tobacco, the wider the ember, the cherry that's burning at any one time, the more tobacco that's burning at any one time. So you're going to be getting more of those flavors. So for me, for bulk and blends and that kind of thing, I think that works very well. But other than that, that's purely, again, logic based, which is you're burning more tobacco, a broader square footage of tobacco. Erinmore, yeah. I mean, I went through a period not long ago when I was smoking a lot of Erinmore, and as you know, I was smoking the mixture more than the flake, and recently I've been smoking the flake more than the mixture. And I'm still finding my way, even though I really enjoy it. I have a few different vintages which are open at the moment. I've got fresh, I've got old, I've got very old, I've got medium old, and I haven't yet made my mind up. And I'm trying to still get to the bottom of which I prefer. And I'm at the moment kind of veering towards saying that fresher is better, with maybe just a year or 2 or 3's age on it. But very old didn't really work for me. I've got an old Murray's tin, originally made in Ireland, a proper Murray's tin of mixture, which I've opened, and despite the fact that, you know, it's a sealed tin, and, you know, the people talk about it evaporating, the aromatics evaporating, and you'd expect it, you know, logically you'd say if it's airtight, why would it evaporate? But the bottom line is that I think that rather than evaporate, I think it breaks down, just breaks down over age on a molecular level. And whilst it might all still be inside the tin, but it breaks down as a flavour, as I say, at a molecular level. And it's just, I didn't enjoy it a huge amount. Whereas the tin that really got me into Erinmore was a tin that Danny Shaw, the late Danny Shaw, sent me, which really, I thoroughly enjoyed that tin, and I went through that tin very, very fast. Just bear with me a second, I just need to send a message. So that one, I was estimating, I don't think it was a Murray's original, I'm not entirely sure. It might have still been made in the EU. It might have already been made in the EU, but it wasn't that old. May have been about 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that. And that was a fantastic, good night Suffolk, thanks for joining. That was a very, very good smoke. And as I say, I went through that tin really fast. And the next tin of Erinmore that I bought, the mixture, which I think was from GQ. Could it have been GQ? Do they sell Erinmore? Maybe not. I can't remember. I think they do. I think it was from GQ. And I enjoyed that, I would say, almost equally as well as the older tin. But when I opened the tin from Murray's, which is probably 20 odd years old, it's maybe that the blend was different and it was a more mature smoke. It was a more about the tobacco than the flavouring. That could be. Maybe that's just how it tasted in the original form, and I was just preferring the more aromatic one, but I didn't enjoy it as much, and I've still got the majority of that tin left, so I'd have to revisit that and see what that's like. I've also got a very old tin of Murray's, the original Murray's tin of the flake. And because that's a flake, I'm hoping that will still be a good smoke. but as yet I haven't cracked that tin. Anyhow, I think I'm going to call it a morning. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, Tree. Thank you, Suffolk. Thank you, Cool. Thank you, Mike, Tim, Scottish Gaucho, Suffolk, Jimmy, everybody else, David. Thank you very, very much for joining. I hope to see you all up in Yorkshire at some point. I'm sure I'll be doing some videos, and if there is some chance of a meetup, perhaps we'll do that as well, which would be cool. But otherwise, hopefully we'll be seeing some interesting parts of the country, and I'll take some clips of that and share that with you in the fullness of time. So I wish you all a very good evening, morning, afternoon, depending on which part of the world you're in, and I'll catch you on the next one.